This is the news in brief from the United Nations. Humanitarians have vowed to stay and deliver in Gaza, where fighting between Israeli forces and Hamas militants resumed on Friday after the end of a week-long pause. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, who is in Dubai for the COP28 climate conference, took to the social media platform X to urge the warring parties to return to the negotiating table to agree a long-lasting ceasefire that would allow desperately needed aid into the enclave. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk described the resumption of hostilities as catastrophic. He also expressed deep concern over declarations by Israeli political and military leaders planning to expand and intensify the military offensive. The return to violence follows the expiration of the truce, which had allowed fuel, food, and water to be delivered to Gaza, where more than 1 million people are sheltering in facilities operated by the UN agency that assists Palestine refugees, UNRWA. The pause also enabled the release of hostages seized by Hamas during its deadly incursion into Israel on the 7th of October, in which some 1,200 people were killed. Scores of Palestinians held in Israeli jails were also freed during the break-in fighting. Moving to Dubai, where the UN Secretary-General challenged world leaders attending COP28 to show real global climate leadership. Warning that humanity's fate is hanging in the balance, he said they must act now to end the climate catastrophe. He said Earth's vital signs are failing, and to prevent planetary crash and burn, we need cooperation and political will. Mr. Guterres also welcomed the major breakthrough achieved on Thursday during the opening day of the conference. Delegates agreed a deal on the operationalization of a fund to help the world's most vulnerable countries pay for loss and damage caused by climate change. The leadership of communities affected by HIV has been vital in driving progress to end the epidemic, and their efforts are being celebrated on World AIDS Day on the 1st of December. From fighting stigma and discrimination to advocating for access to affordable interventions and services, they've been at the forefront of the fight to end AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. UNAIDS, the UN agency working towards the goal of zero HIV infections, has urged governments and donors to fully support grassroots communities who have shown for years that they are ready, willing, and able to lead the charge. The UNAIDS country director in Kenya, Medine Suhayu, explains.
When we say let communities lead, they have competencies, and it's very important to recognize that competency and empower them so that they can do more in terms of the response, but also they have done quite a lot in the past 4 decades, and this is the time for communities to showcase and to amplify the role that they play.
Finally, the World Food Programme, WFP, is seeking $26.3 million to assist 1 million Afghans forced to leave Pakistan following the government's decision to deport undocumented foreigners. The policy went into effect last month, and so far more than 370,000 people have made their way back to Afghanistan. WFP are on the ground at 2 border crossings, supplying families with cash to cover their most basic food needs. Families face a bleak future in Afghanistan, where 1/3 of the people do not know where their next meal will come from, and some areas in the West are still reeling from multiple earthquakes. Communities across the country rely on WFP food assistance to survive, but funding shortfalls have forced the UN agency to cut emergency assistance this year. Deanne Penn, UN News.